Hi, I'm Nola Simon. I'm the host of Hybrid Remote Center of Excellence, and tonight I'm recording a podcast with a full house. So if you hear background noise, yeah, that's the fun of having teenagers. Anyways, I wanted to record a podcast actually in response to an article that was published this week that was actually about tying workplace flexibility to performance. And so the idea goes that if you are hitting all of your goals, you will be able to retain your work from home or remote or distributed work, whatever you want to call that. And basically, if you start to fail, then the arrangement is at risk because the goal is really to make sure that people are motivated to perform and produce in order to maintain the flexibility. So I have some issues with this because, for one, this is treating an operating system like a perk. Hybrid, remote, whatever you happen to choose, whether it's work from anywhere, whether it's digital nomadism, if you're embedding workations into your system, it's a way of working. It's a commitment to an operational model that really needs to be nurtured and maintained and made available for long term. It's not something that you're going to dismantle in the next year, hopefully. So it's not a perk. It does require time and investment. And treating it and tying it to performance is problematic. So I've lived this. This is exactly what my experience was because it was dangled in front of us as a benefit, as a perk. And so in 2011, I started advocating for work from home. 2012, we started a pilot. We had to sign off on all kinds of agreements where we had to have an office with a door. We couldn't have any noise in the house. We couldn't have any sounds of children in the background. There could be no noise from pets. It was stressful because I had young kids and I had cats at that time, but I didn't have a dog. But I had neighbors who had dogs. There was one day I was on the phone and it was summertime, the windows were open, and our neighbors had gone away for a few hours, and their beagle was not happy about that. And that dog was howling, and my client mentioned it. And I was paranoid because if that client had complained, it meant that I could have actually been dragged into the office and lost my flexibility because a client complained because there was noise on the phone. That's the impact. So it's something that people start to depend upon. They build their lives around it. So they hire babysitters, they plan their lives, right? They put their kids into, after school sports, knowing that they can pick them up and take them there. They plan doctor's appointments. They have family engagements that are scheduled at different times than they would be if they actually had to be in the office all the time. It becomes something that embeds within the life and you get used to. And when you're tying it to performance, the difficulty with that is, of course, you want your people to perform, but the reality is life happens. How does this work when you've got somebody who's going through the death of a loved one, a divorce, financial issues? During the pandemic, there was actually not only just the pandemic issues, but also domestic violence. That's a factor. Do you think any of those have an impact on how people are performing? And if you're already having challenging life situations, maybe you have mental health issues, maybe you have physical health issues. If you've got cancer, do you think that the threat of losing your flexibility so that you can actually get to the hospital to have your cancer treatments and try to work at the same time, do you think that's going to help you? Do you think that's going to motivate you? How does that impact your family? So, the other issue with tying flexibility to performance is it actually introduces variability in how the program is actually administered. Because all of a sudden now you have managers at all different levels making assessments and determinations about whether people should be in the office or not according to performance. And again, that's problematic because we know that most managers are not fully trained. We know that most managers have not been educated well about how to actually handle hybrid and remote or leading at all, right? A lot of leaders have to actually figure it out on their own. They never really get formal training on how to really be a good manager. And again, that's problematic. It's an operating model that shouldn't be a perk and that shouldn't have that flexibility and that power control, that dynamic between manager to manager. Because what happens is you have variability between teams. So, for example, I worked on a large team. We were 60 people. We had 3 different managers, 20 people per manager to make it viable. And they would make different decisions. And it introduced a feeling of inequity. Just a short example would be what happens if you actually have a snow day and you're actually scheduled for an office day. Do you get to work from home? Is that okay? Do you have to try to get into the office, even if you're probably going to be late? Could you switch days? Could you flip the days? We had one manager who went by the rule book all the time, happened to be my manager, and you would either have to take the day off and actually use sick days or vacation or whatever you wanted to code it, rather than actually switch the days. And so I quickly learned that if I happened to actually contact the other 2 managers and ask that permission, they would have that flexibility to make that decision that my manager wasn't able to. The key was asking them early enough and being strategic in how you actually use that. So again, that's what I mean about variability and fairness and equity, because what's happening is people are going to cherry pick which managers they actually want to report to. And if they can't actually get away from the manager who's making decisions that aren't to their benefit, then that's a reason that people start to leave. And people are still leaving. Yes, the job market may be challenging and problematic, but people are going to do what fuels their lives. So if it may not be something they can figure out right away, they might have to stick with it and figure it out. But if they're not happy about how it feels long term, and they don't feel that you're setting them up for success in their career and their family, that perk that you're dangling and threatening them with the loss of, that's not going to be motivating for them to say. And turnover really impacts the bottom line. Anyways, I just wanted to share a little bit about my history and my story with that carrot, that stick, and that intimidation aspect of tying flexibility to performance. And I personally had several leaves during this system. I broke my foot. I had to go and leave. I had a car accident. I had to go and leave. And the return policies are also where insurance companies and also certain employers are trying to actually bring you back to work by bringing you back into the office as well, too. So that's another thing that you have to be aware of as well, too. That reintegration to work period, you have the possibility that you lose your flexibility there as well, too. And it's not even just company decisions. It's really if you have an insurance company and what their protocol is at that particular aspect and how they handle short-term disability and long-term disability. So again, something to be aware of. This is a whole systematic, layered, complex process that really deserves more attention and more investment than a perk level investment. Anyways, have a great weekend.
Finding yourself in orbit.
Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk soon. Bye.